there's lots of unique ways that psychodrama, sociometry, sociodrama can be used to address the impacts of social injustice and oppression within the work. So, in this book on trauma informed principles, there's a handful of examples in chapter 10, at the end of chapter 10, from some of the ways that I've used sociometry, psychodrama, and sociodrama within groups, within organizations, to try to address issues of identity. And I will say this is certainly an area of growth for me, and want to recognize that based on my own identities, that there's certainly going to be ways that I might be limited when it comes to addressing and thinking about and fully understanding issues related to racism and gender and sexuality and so on. So, one simple use of sociometry, simple example, to explore the group dynamics related to racism is that I could use simple spectrograms. I could do a spectrogram on a scale of 0 to 10. I could start with, how comfortable do you feel talking about racism and white supremacy? And I could ask the group to self-assess themselves on this spectrogram. And this will give us a lot of important information about the group. Then I might ask a second spectrogram prompt. How prevalent do you think racism is in our society today? And again, everyone would self-assess themselves. We'd have some smaller, maybe one-on-one or smaller group discussions about the choices. And then we could move on to a third spectrogram. Perhaps how open are you to learning about racism and what you can do to combat it and address it in your life and in your work? And we'd have everyone line up again on the spectrum, assessing themselves. So these are 3 simple spectrograms that I used in a guest lecture at a social work graduate course at the University of Pennsylvania in a course on racism and social work practice. In that same guest lecture, I used sociodrama and really short, simple sociodramatic role plays where I had individuals in the group partner with somebody else in the group. So everybody had a partner, and I assigned roles to each person within the dyad and a scene related to addressing racism, advocating for justice, repairing a relationship after a microaggression, and other scenes related to racism. I had them practice those scenarios here and now in the group through role playing. This is what we would call role training, in that we're putting group members through role plays in surplus reality, putting them in situations that they're likely to find themselves in the future, and giving them an opportunity to practice how they're going to respond in that situation through role play. Obviously, you want to be sensitive and careful and thoughtful about the roles that you're assigning and the nature of the situations that you're putting people in the role plays, and ensuring that it's done in a safe and thoughtful way. Another example comes from a sociodrama workshop training that I led many years ago. This was in the United States, and some of the political social context was that it was the height of the Me Too movement. And in this sociodrama workshop, of course, I taught about sociodrama, and then it was time to demonstrate sociodrama. And I asked the group for a theme, a topic that was on their minds that we could use for the demonstration. And the participants in the group were primarily women, therapists and students, and they chose the topic of sexism and gender violence, rape culture, and sexual harassment. So this was the theme that we worked with. And as a male therapist, a male trainer leading this workshop, primarily of women, it was really important for me to acknowledge my identity in that moment and to really empower the group to lead and collaborate and co-lead the sociodrama, as there were sure to be things that I might not understand fully or things I might miss because of my gender related to the topic. And the sociodrama emerged as a conversation between a daughter and their mother about issues related to consent and sex and sexual harassment. And so, through this sociodramatic conversation, it wasn't an actual conversation that any participant had had. It was a representation, it was a story and characters that we made up spontaneously that represented this larger social issue. And in the sociodrama, the daughter was expressing confusion about the current events and the news, about the different court cases, how men in position of power seem to be getting away with sexual harassment or even rape without accountability and punishment. And so through the sociodrama, the feelings of fear and confusion and anger and disempowerment and oppression were able to be expressed and validated through the roles. Group members offered doubling statements to each of the roles for expression. And then we got into validating the feelings, and spontaneously the role of Wonder Woman from the movie that had been recently been released at the time came into the scene to help the mother and the daughter facilitate this conversation in a way that was empowering, in a way that celebrated women and gender differences, and that promoted a sense of safety and really channeled powerful archetypal energies related to womanhood. So the sociodrama really came to a sense of closure with Wonder Woman guiding the group and offering protection and inspiration to the mother, the daughter in the scene, and to the rest of the group. So this is another example of using sociodrama to engage around issues of identity. When it comes specifically to psychodrama, there's also different ways that we can employ psychodrama rather than sociodrama to interface with issues related to identity. And I think one of the examples I could share from my own work is an experience I had working with a client who was in the midst of changing their gender, and their parent was really struggling with this. So this client had begun using they, them pronouns, and the parent was still referring to them using she and her pronouns. The father was really struggling to accept this. And the client was struggling to feel accepted by their father and really wanted to initiate a conversation and express how important this was to them. So in our one-on-one therapy session, I initiated a short role play. We would call it a role training psychodrama, where I had the client use an empty chair to represent their father and to practice having this conversation. So they were able to have a conversation with their parent, tell them how important it was that they understood or tried to understand, or at least respected their requests about the pronouns being used, and they even were changing their name at the same time. And then they were able to reverse roles with their parent and just try to see the situation from their parent's perspective, which gave them more empathy and helped them develop more patience for their parent, who in this situation was really trying, but was struggling to understand. And then they had the opportunity through the role play to practice and try out different strategies for educating their parent, for connecting with their parent with empathy and love, and asking for what they wanted and what they needed from their parent. Now, this is another example of how we could use psychodrama specifically to interface with issues related to identity or gender. And there's lots of other examples that you can find of this. There's a recent book publication, Psychodrama in Brazil, that has various chapters devoted to using sociodrama, psychodrama around issues of identity. Leticia Nieto's work and her publications really emphasize using Pamela Hayes' addressing model for psychodrama directors in developing our own awareness of identities and how the group dynamics are impacted by identity. And there's been many others that have written and published about using psychodrama, sociodrama, sociometry to interface with issues related to identity. I would say many more examples come from our international colleagues rather than from the United States, though there seems to be much more interest and emphasis on identity and culture and race within the psychodrama community in the United States in the past 10 years or so. Even the history of psychodrama and the founders of psychodrama can be helpful to consider in this context. Jacob Moreno, the founder of psychodrama, was a Jewish, Romanian psychiatrist, and he was a refugee in Vienna, later immigrated to the United States. And there's even some suggestion through his autobiography that he was undocumented for part of his time in his first couple years in the United States. He writes about having to constantly go back to Canada to get a visa renewed and the complexities and uncertainties of that whole process. And it wasn't until he got married in the United States that he was able to get his license to practice medicine and start to be in the process of becoming a citizen. Zerka Moreno, co-founder of Psychodrama, the wife of Jacob Moreno, also was an immigrant from Europe. And I often wonder how their experiences as immigrants really impacted the development of their ideas and the practice of psychodrama and sociometry. Jacob Moreno was also a trauma survivor. Really, both of the Morenos were trauma survivors. In his autobiography, Jacob Moreno talks about experiencing childhood sexual abuse, really impactful abandonment and disconnection from his father. He talks about experiencing discrimination based on his Jewish heritage. And then later he shares about the difficulties he experiences in the United States based on his immigration status. English was certainly not his first language, or even his second or his third language. And I often wonder if his experience as an immigrant and as a non-native English speaker really influenced his decision to emphasize action and nonverbal communication, body language, over verbal communication in his work. Zerka Moreno also experienced adversity and trauma in her life. She was a Dutch and Jewish immigrant to the United States. She met Jacob Moreno while seeking psychiatric treatment for her sister. And I can imagine that her family would have experienced much adversity because of her sister's difficulties. Zerka was 40. She had her entire arm at the shoulder amputated because of cancer and a tumor that was forming. And I got to believe that that was pretty impactful on her life. So it's hard to discredit the identities, the experiences, the culture, the backgrounds of Jacob and Zerka Moreno, and think that it wouldn't have had any impact on their thinking and on their development of psychodrama. I think their experiences of tyranny in Europe at the time probably really influenced their focus on society, their focus on democratic group structures, healing in large groups, and their emphasis of creating new paradigms for leadership within groups and within communities and within society. Jacob Moreno actually coined the term group therapy in Philadelphia at an APA conference in 1932. And the research he presented at that conference was based on his research in Sing Sing prison in New York, where he was assessing the individual identities of each individual that was living in the prison block in the community. And he was trying to restructure and rearrange the position of individuals within the prison community based on shared identities, based on complementary roles, based on shared preferences, religion, language, profession, age, and other demographic factors. And he called this group therapy, when really the way I would think of it nowadays is that it was community work rather than simply group therapy. That he was trying to restructure communities and position community members in ways where they could be therapeutic agents for each other. And through his research, he actually used many of the identities that were outlined by Pamela Hayes in the addressing model, which I discussed earlier in this video. So I thought this was an interesting connection. Jacob Moreno and his colleagues in Hudson Valley were some of the first of the social scientists to focus on racism and racial conflict within communities and within organizations. Moreno frequently promoted sociodrama and sometimes ethnodrama as methods within his society that were designed to promote healing related to intergroup conflict or larger collective issues within society and within the culture. And there are many psychodramatists that continue this work, using Moreno's methods to address larger social issues. Sociodrama is sometimes a better option than psychodrama when working with collective issues, because sociodrama is more focused on the group's collective experience rather than an individual specific story. So in psychodrama, we're looking at an individual's specific story and experience and the specific roles and role relationships and people connected to them. Whereas in sociodrama, we're looking at collective roles, collective issues, and larger dynamics that are representative of shared experiences in a group or in a community. So there's lots of different ways we can use sociometry, psychodrama, sociodrama to explore these issues. And I encourage you to check out some of the examples in this book related to that. And there's multiple examples in my previous book, which is called Social Work, Sociometry, and Psychodrama. This book, you can actually download the entire thing for free if you search for it and go to the publisher's website, which is Springer Nature. In the later chapters of this book, there's a whole section on, here it is, part 6, sociometry and psychodrama in communities, organizations, and educational work. And there's multiple chapters here that focus on using sociometry, psychodrama, and sociodrama within communities and addressing issues related to identity and collective issues, collective trauma. So this 6 trauma-informed principle is one that I think the psychodrama community in the United States, at least, is sometimes lacking in. And I think it's one of the most important areas of growth for us as a psychodrama community, to really be thinking about issues of identity, to be centering them within our groups, to be using sociometry to explore identity within the group, using psychodrama to heal harms from past experiences of oppression or discrimination that individuals experience, and using sociodrama to explore collective issues related to identity within society and within organizations. So again, this 6th trauma-informed principle about identity can't be fully addressed if we're not also considering the other 5 trauma-informed principles. So I really encourage you to check out the other videos on this channel, the other chapters in this book, as they relate to the other 5 trauma-informed principles. I hope you found this video useful. And if you did, I encourage you to like the video, subscribe to our channel so you get notifications about future videos, and leave us a comment, leave us a message in the comments. Tell us exactly what you found helpful about this video, or if you think there was anything missing in this video and this discussion about identity. Tell us how you're using group work and leadership and psychodrama and other methods to help promote healing and safety and celebration related to issues of identity.